Prepare to be captivated by the business story of the week, hosted by me, Shaheen Shan. Join us on a journey through the twists and turns of entrepreneurial triumphs and setbacks. Immerse yourself in the narrative and witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. This is Business Story of the Week.
And we are back. Welcome to Business Story of the Week. I am your co-host, Joshua, where we navigate the world of entrepreneurship, business, corporate world, innovations, uncovering stories of perseverance, struggle, and success. And today we have quite the innovator in our hands, a musician at heart. I am very, very excited for our guest today. Greg is the founder and CEO of Global Performance Institute, an award-winning keynote speaker and the author of a brand new book called The Tip Jar Culture: How to Re-engage and Reignite Your Workforce. Greg is passionate about transforming the employee experience, or as he likes to say, taking the IRK out of work. I love that. And his clients include everything from Fortune 100 companies, corporations, to local chapters of associations. I recently learned that Greg also spent 15 years touring the world as a professional dueling piano performer. We need to get into that later, and I can't wait to hear more about that. So without further ado, let's welcome Greg to Business Story of the Week. Greg, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me, Josh. I appreciate you making time for this conversation. I'm excited for it.
I am pretty excited as well. I want to get into this right away because what you do is very interesting. It resonates with me. I love music, but before we really get into this, I always like to start it this way. I always like to start from the very beginning, the very where it all began, right? Where did it all begin for Greg? How did the journey start? Was there anything perhaps in your childhood life? Of course, your love for music. How did that begin? And how did you transition that into the corporate world? And how did you do both at the same time?
Well, it's an interesting story in that one of my first exposures to being a musician or a professional entertainer was through a family friend. His name is Ken McBride, and he did what I do. He performed for audiences. He did it a bit differently, but he played the piano and sang at bars and restaurants all over the country. And so when I was little, my parents would often take us, me and my siblings, to see his dinner show. And he would bring me up on stage because he knew I was interested in the piano, and he'd sort of sit me on his lap. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And he'd, let me see the audience and play a song or two with me sitting on his lap. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Wow. Well, fast forward to 2015, and I had suffered while performing a pretty severe vocal cord injury. And that left me unable to speak and sing. And here's where Ken comes back into the story. At the time, I didn't realize how severe the injury was. And so I was just willing to leave it be for a couple weeks, maybe not sing as much, and see what happened. Well, we were at one of Ken's shows to just visit and surprise him. And he heard me speak and he said, "Oh, Gregory, your voice is in trouble. You need to go see this doctor." And so he gave me the name of a doctor who turned out to be one of the best, or who was not doing a very good job telling the story. I'll tell you what.
It's okay.
So it turned out that this doctor wasn't just an ear, nose, and throat doctor. He was the guy that professional musicians went to see when their voice was in trouble or when they needed vocal care. And so he took one look at my vocal cords using some specialized equipment that they have in his office. And he said, if you don't have surgery on your vocal cords immediately, you will lose the ability to speak and sing permanently.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness.
So not only did Ken inspire my love of performing for audiences, but he literally helped me save my voice, 30, almost 40 years later.
Wow. That's incredible. I really want to get into that. What was the specific vocal injury? Was that a name for it? And why is it that you were going to lose your voice? And why wouldn't you be able to speak if you didn't figure it out.
Yeah. So the backstory to this injury is that my voice had been getting progressively raspier and rougher
Okay.
for several years. And I
Okay.
attributed it to more use and just being older. And I back
Mhm.
then smoked cigarettes and enjoyed going out to bars and loud
Mhm.
places with friends. So I didn't
Mhm.
think that much of it. But now looking back, knowing what I know, the
Mhm.
decline in vocal clarity and quality that I experienced
Mhm.
in just a few years, I see that now as, of course, that's severe. Of course, someone should be looking at my vocal cords on a regular basis as a professional
Uh-huh.
voice user anyway, and they would have caught that
Mhm.
sooner.
Mhm.
What happened was much like if you use, let's say you go out into your garden or into a field and you grab a
Right.
rake and you don't wear gloves and you rake all day cleaning up those
Oh.
leaves or cleaning up the field. At the end of the day, you're going to have little bumps on your hand called calluses, right?
Okay.
Places where all that vibration built up a little callus on your hand.
Yeah.
Those calluses happen on your vocal cords when you overuse them. They're called
Mhm.
nodules. So I had
Okay.
developed those calluses. They're very dangerous for singers because your vocal cords vibrate at a very specific speed, and
Mhm.
that's how you make pitch. And when one of those
Mhm.
vocal cords has a callus on it, it's just the tiniest bit heavier, but that
Uh-huh.
tiny bit makes a big difference in how
Uh-huh.
fast it's able to vibrate.
Uh-huh.
So that's what caused the initial hoarseness or
Wow.
raspiness. But instead of going to a doctor and getting that looked at, I muscled through and I found a way. And in doing so, damaged my vocal cords even further.
Even more.
And so
Oh
then
my.
your vocal cords are trying to recover from that. And I muscled through and
Mhm.
found a way. And so I created even more damage. On top
Mhm.
of all this
Mhm.
damage, there's a very bad acid reflux problem. And the reason
Oh.
that's such a big deal for a singer is because your vocal cords naturally have little cuts and tears in them throughout the day, especially if you
Mhm.
use them a lot. And in a
Mhm.
very normal environment of somebody's voice and their digestive tract, your vocal cords just heal overnight.
Mhm. Mhm.
But in
Mhm.
my case, that cut was
Yeah.
being bathed in stomach
Uh-huh.
acid all night while I had that
Mhm.
reflux. So it made all that damage I just described to you
Mhm.
even worse. And by the
Mhm.
time I got to see the doctor, my vocal cords had gotten to such an extreme and severe point that they would have become permanently paralyzed,
Wow.
meaning the nerves and the muscles. And I will be honest, I don't understand the science behind the permanent paralysis bit, thankfully, because I didn't have
Mhm.
to, we didn't get there. But everything just sort of gives up and your body just can't make it work anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why I would have lost the ability to speak. Now I would have been able to make
Oh my.
some sort of noise, but
Okay.
so I can, it probably would have sounded something like this.
Oh wow. Come on.
And so for a singer and a professional voice user, that's really not, that's losing your voice forever.
That's losing your life, really. If for someone who was doing what you do and loved what you do, um, Greg, it to me it almost sounds like a metal singer who overused their voice the wrong way and just kind of injured themselves over and over again. How are you now? Can you still sing? Is it how do you think it has affected you? So like looking back, would you say that your voice quality was better now, but now that you've recovered, would you say that it's just as good?
I mean, if I go and I listen to recordings of me in like 2005,
Mm-hmm.
2004, like right when I
Mm-hmm.
first started performing at piano bars, my
Mm-hmm.
voice is so much stronger and more malleable, more flexible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Agile is probably the right word. Now, some of
Mm-hmm.
that is age, right? I was
Okay.
22 ish then, and I'm almost
Mhm.
42 today. So some of that is age, but a lot of that is vocal damage. I'm able to
Mhm.
sing today, but I'm
Mhm.
nowhere near as capable as I was back then. And a lot of that has to do with
Mhm.
vocal cord damage. And so, outside of the work I do as a professional for my clients,
Yeah.
among the other professionals who do what I do, some of them have been on your show, some of them may be listening now.
Mhm.
Anyone who uses their voice for a living really needs
Yeah.
a vocal care professional in their life at
Mhm.
least once a year just like you should go see your dentist once a year, at least,
Mm-hmm.
your regular family physician once a year for a checkup. If you are using your voice to make a living, you should go see someone who specializes in vocal care at least once a year and let them take a look at your vocal cords to make sure that you're healthy, that they're functioning properly. Because a lot of the surgeries that I had to endure and silence that I had to navigate and changes that happened in my life, a lot of that, maybe all of that, could have been avoided if I had been going to a voice professional at least once a year ever since I started singing.
Well, that is quite an essential tip, not just for musicians, not just for, you mentioned your experience in the corporate world. You'd have to be talking to clients. So if you lost that, you literally lost two opportunities in your life. And I watched your video. You said that, you felt bad about losing that other job. And now that you mentioned a bit more about your corporate experience, tell us a bit about that. How did you get there? How did you transition? And how did you get into the corporate world, basically?
Yeah, well, I know this may surprise, people who aren't watching the video who are just listening, but I'm not Beyonce. I'm not Taylor Swift. I don't make millions and billions of dollars singing for other people. So I had to have some way to pay my bills. And that meant having a day job in addition to my night and weekend work as a piano bar performer. So I had a day job working in corporate, and most of my 20-year career in corporate involved business development or marketing efforts for companies that served and consulted for other organizations.
Okay.
So I started off in sales for a large publicly traded company, and I finished up as a director of sales for a small local here in Philadelphia human capital consulting firm. And so I got to see a lot of different businesses, how they worked, how their leaders led and ran teams, and what some of the challenges were that organizations were facing. And I noticed there was a connection point between what I did during the day and what I saw in those clients and what I did at night and what I saw with my piano bar clients. And that was, in the piano bar at night, I had to take a group of people, many of whom were strangers, at that piano bar and get them to work as a team. Not only work as a team, but do something that is very scary for most humans to do in public, and that's sing, right?
Wow.
Now, during the day, my clients and even myself as a leader in corporate had to do the same thing. Now, maybe we weren't singing together at work, but I had to take a group of people, many of whom were strangers, and get them to work together. And what I noticed was that there were tools we used in the piano bar to facilitate that cohesion, the forming of a group really quickly, and building teamwork and ensuring collaboration took place. There were tools that we used in the piano bar that I noticed were consistently missing in organizations that struggled with employee engagement, retaining top talent, getting collaboration and teamwork to be a priority for their people. And so what I began to wonder was, what if we could take those tools that we use at the piano bar and adapt them for use in the corporate world? What might that look like? How could that function? And that's where this idea of the tip jar culture came in, because I identified three tools or techniques, or as I call them in the book, principles we used at the piano bar that, when implemented in the corporate world, could be used to phenomenal effect. And more importantly, I think, when missing from the corporate world, almost always signal disengagement is going to be a problem, that talent retention is going to be more difficult than it needs to be.
Right. And that is a perfect way to introduce this tip jar culture that you've came up with when it comes to engaging, right? Because that's the problem, is engagement, and you're making people want to work together specifically. Talk to us a bit more about the tip jar culture. You mentioned the three principles. You have shared some key insights and strategies, but mainly of all, this culture, does this tip jar culture involve corporate teams singing together? Do they have to?
They don't have to. I do think that would be some value if we all did a bit of singing together. In fact, there was an interesting study. It's relevant to the field of positive psychology that singing together in a group, it does something to our bodies that's akin or that's similar to when cats purr. So they're not really sure if it's just the vibration or if it's also that part of being in a group. But folks who participate in choirs together, on average, live 5 to 10 years longer than folks who didn't. There's a lot missing from this study, but it's just an interesting anecdote. So you ask about singing. No, organizations who want to adopt the tip jar culture don't have to sing. I think maybe they could, but they don't have to. Really what they have to do is listen to the first part of a night at a piano bar. If you want to understand the tip jar culture, this is where you'll really find it. In the first part of a night at a piano bar, when we're trying to get the audience to understand what this experience is really going to take for it to be successful, many piano players have something that they speak called the spiel.
Spiel.
Yeah, the spiel. That's so
in piano bars.
Maybe it's better if I just show you. So if you were to walk into my piano bar on any given night, here's what you would hear right at the beginning. Hey, folks, welcome into the piano bar. If it's your first time or your first time in a long time, we're super excited to have you here. Now, I want to make sure that your evening is a success. My name's Greg. Over across the piano is Brian, was one of my dueling piano partners. So let's say over across the piano, there's Brian. We're going to be your piano players for the evening, but you are going to be our audience for the evening. And as such, there are a couple things you need to know to make sure this experience is fantastic. First and foremost, this is an audience participation experience. That's right. We're going to ask you to sing, and we want to make sure that you have a good time singing and you sing safely. And that means we need you to lubricate those vocal cords. So we've got a bar over there. Head on over to the bar, grab something to drink. You're going to need it throughout the night. That is tip number 1. Get something that you can use to take a sip. Now, tip number 2, most important, if you look around the piano bar, you're going to notice that on the tables on the bar, there are little slips of paper that say request slip on them. That's because we are musicians, not mind readers. So if there's something you'd like us to play, we want you to go ahead and write it down on that slip, bring it on up to us here at the piano. If we know it, we'll play it gladly. And if we don't, we'll play it badly. Now, here's the final part that you need to understand, and that is that if you bring a slip up to us with a song request on it, and it is not accompanied by something green and presidential, here in the US, that means money, then it is not a request, it is simply a suggestion. So please pair those requests with tips, and if you're not going to tip us, make sure you're tipping your bartenders and your servers. They're working very hard for you. In that little spiel that we deliver at the beginning of every night at a piano bar are the 3 principles of the tip jar culture. The first one I identified pretty clearly for you. That's take a sip.
Take a sip.
We're building a community. And much like you visit a bar or a restaurant or a house to have a drink or to share a meal with friends, we're all here at the piano bar for a common purpose. It's not just to have a drink. It's to create an experience that's better by us being together than we could create on our own. And so this idea of taking a sip is, how is the organization bringing its people together, united in a common mission? How are they creating something by coming together that's better than they could create if they were doing it on their own? That's a question that every leader, every organization needs to be able to answer. They need to be able to chart that course for their people to follow. A compelling mission, a compelling goal, something that's going to bring them together. So by getting their people to take a sip, they're achieving the first principle of the tip jar culture. The second you heard, I didn't necessarily call it out, but it's fill out a slip. When we're together, when we're here on this mission, after we've taken a sip, we don't just want to follow orders. We want to help create the experience. So by giving the audience members a request slip to fill out, we're actually letting them guide the progression of songs throughout the evening. They're more bought in to participating in this experience because some of it was their idea. So how do we bring that out in a corporate setting? How do we tap into the ideas and the thoughts, goals, desires of all of the people in our organization so that they're not just here for the mission, they're collaborating and contributing to the mission, to the work that we're doing? How are they filling out a slip each day as part of their work? designing
Right.
the experience that they're having.
Mm-hmm.
And the third and final part is leave a tip. Now, it'd be great if every organization could pay their people more, right? I mean, isn't that what every leader is hearing from their people? I want a bigger title. I want a bigger paycheck. And to some extent, you might want to evaluate, is your pay competitive? Are there opportunities for promotions within your organization? But when I talk about leaving a tip, really what I'm talking about is incentivizing the impact that each individual makes within the organization, showing them what that impact is, reminding them of that impact, and not just a thank you and a slap on the back or a handshake. I'm talking about showing them the difference, the change that takes place in the world when they come to work and contribute all of themselves. What happens? Because especially in the world today, where many of us are working remotely, it's easy to feel like our job is nothing more than tapping on a keyboard, and then magic things go through wires all over the world in this internet, and then a paycheck shows up on Friday. It's really easy to lose sight of the change that our work creates in the world. And so as an organization or as a leader within an organization, how are you showing that impact? How are you literally spoon feeding that impact to your people so that they can't ignore it, that they can't miss it? And I'll give you an example there. I spoke to a group of engineers not very long ago. And as part of pretty much every program that I do, I try to do a little bit of research and maybe even interview some of the audience members. If I can in advance, I'd like to get to know who's going to be in the audience. And in having a conversation with one of the members of the audience, someone who's leading an engineering firm, they mentioned that early in your career as an engineer, you get to see a couple of projects out in the field. And that's mainly because the organization wants you to see a little bit of everything that's happening. So at some point, you'll go out into the field, do a site visit. But as you get into management levels, 2 or 3 years in, maybe you get a promotion, much of the work feels like desk work. That you're working on designs, or you're working on proposals, or you're collaborating, you're collaborating in meetings with clients, but you're not necessarily out in the field. And this goes on for decades, perhaps, in the course of a career. And it's only, again, maybe towards the end of somebody's career, when they're in an executive role, that they get brought out to these grand openings of sites where you're actually now seeing, again, the work that was completed. So what they shared was that at the beginning and at the very end of a career in engineering, a career that could span 30 years, maybe it's only a fraction of time where you actually see what you're doing out in the world. And these engineers are working on projects that put water systems in cities, that build roads for whole cities as they're developing. They're literally changing the world, and many of them don't get to see it.
Wow.
That's a failure of leadership. It's a failure. It's an absence of this third principle in that organization. So when an organization helps their employees take a sip, when they create that cause, that purpose, when they allow them to fill out a slip, when they invite contribution and collaboration, and when they incentivize impact, when they leave a tip, when they help show their employees the power and the outcome of what they've been doing for work, you've got a tip jar culture.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a kind of, it's like a marriage of these two things that you've put together. It's like a dual perspective of how your career has progressed as a corporate professional and an entertainer. And it shaped your understanding of performance and entertainment and impacting the workplace in a more meaningful way so everyone can collaborate. It's really kind of like, it really is bringing that piano bar culture into the corporate workplace. I'm very, very, yeah, I mean, you already gave us an example with the engineers, but talk to us real quickly if you could give us like a short example of the whole thing. Like what was like the tip that the corporate leaders gave? What was what was that second one? The request, and then finally, what did they incentivize to change? Was there one more particular example that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I love that you pick up on this idea that it's bringing elements of a piano bar into the office, because
Mhm.
people generally are excited to go out for
Yeah.
a night at the piano bar. And I think you could also generalize and say most people are
Right.
not super excited to go to work in the morning. Now, there's a whole lot that can lead into that, and I recognize that, we don't necessarily get to enjoy vodka or bourbon or whatever your drink of choice is at the workplace.
Yep.
That,
Yep.
that may not be such a bad thing. But
Yeah.
really, the idea is that we can make work more engaging. The experience
Right.
of work is what I think
Mhm.
is due for a change, because it really
Mhm.
hasn't
Mhm.
changed that much since the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
And so by bringing this idea of the piano bar culture, this tip jar culture, into the workplace, we're not just creating an experience that people are more excited to have. We're creating a more fulfilling work
Fulfilling. It
experience. And
definitely
so it's
is.
a win on both sides. The employees have more
Mhm.
fun, and the employer gets a better return from their investment on each employee. So you're
It's
asking for
making
more
work more
examples.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah. The work
Mhm.
that we do, the outcome can be serious, but the process doesn't have to be.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So you asked for another example. I mean, I'll share one
Please.
that's about the request slip, since you mentioned that.
Please.
There's an organization here in Pennsylvania, where I'm based,
Mhm.
that was having a
Mhm.
challenge with employee engagement and talent retention. And they were in a really difficult industry. They were in the healthcare industry, but specifically
Mhm.
the part of the healthcare industry that sends trained and skilled healthcare workers into the homes of their clients.
Wow.
So it's a
Mhm.
challenging working environment. It's not a hospital sort of has a place for everything and everything in its place. But when you walk into a
Mhm.
client's home, it could be a literal mess. So
Precisely.
these people are going into challenging working conditions, dealing with patients who can't make it out of their house and need the care in their home. So challenging patients. So they weren't having the best retention. They weren't having the best engagement as an organization, and things needed to change. And
Mhm.
one of the ideas that was brought and implemented by the Innovation Council at this organization was this idea of, well, they sort of mirrored a Shark Tank. The TV show Shark Tank, where entrepreneurs
Mhm.
bring their idea to a group of investors
Okay.
and they go, here's my idea. Here's where I'm at. I'm sort of stuck. I need some help. I need some money. I need some guidance. I need this. I need that. Well, this leadership group thought, what if we mirrored that idea in our business? Because surely our employees have lots of great ideas. They're like these entrepreneurs. They
Mhm.
have ideas.
Mhm.
Maybe they even have a way to start working on that idea, but because this is not their company, they're going to need some help. So what if
Mhm.
we created a couple of sharks? If we took some senior leaders from different places in our organization
Right.
and had
Right.
our own little council that met every so
Wow.
often and heard from these employees, just like the
Wow.
sharks hear from entrepreneurs. And then we could decide which ideas could be really beneficial for our organization. And
Wow.
we're not going to give them a blank check, but we'll invest instead our time and the company's money
Wow.
into investigating how can we deploy this idea? How can we
Wow.
develop this idea? How can we make this idea a reality?
Fantastic.
That was their version of a request slip.
Mhm. Mhm. That's fantastic. What
And
a way
here's
to
the
put
thing
that.
that's really
Go
special
ahead.
about that
Mhm.
is in that organization, there aren't just trained healthcare workers. There are parents. There
Of
are
course.
children. There are people that are trying to find a way to make an impact in the world. And they were
Mhm.
feeling frustrated. They couldn't
Mhm.
get their voice heard. They couldn't get their
Mhm.
ideas from their brain out into the world. And
Right.
by
Right.
creating this shark tank within their organization, the leaders
Mhm.
gave them, each of them, a path to do that. And so now
Wow.
you have a parent that gets to go home and say to their children, guess what I got to create at work today? You have a
Wow.
child who gets to call their parents and say, hey, this new
Wow.
job I got, they're not just giving me orders to follow, they're giving me real responsibility. Look what we're getting to create because of
Fantastic.
this idea that I had.
Wow. That's so great.
People are actually getting to see the change they're making in the world. And that leads right into that third principle, which is incentivize impact. Leave a tip,
Mhm.
making that
Mhm.
change real.
Fantastic. Of course, it makes people feel like they're involved, like they're heard, and like what they're actually doing is influencing change. It's what a wonderful way to put that. A Shark Tank, a council of employees filling out their request slip and actually being heard by their team, by their corporations. I love that. Um, Greg, as much as I want to keep you much longer in here, all your wisdom has been music to our ears, to my ears. Um, I like to kind of start wrapping this up with this kind of question, in that what is the future? What does the future look like for Greg? What are the impacts that you are trying to make? What is the future aspirations? Can you see your, this professional trajectory of helping corporate worlds, and this philosophy shaping work and life? How do you see it moving forward? And what are the things you aspire for in the future?
I don't know what the future looks like. I don't. There are a couple of things I do know. I know that we're going to need to keep changing and keep evolving. We are trying to catch up with technology.
Yes.
The speed of innovation in technology has far outpaced the speed of innovation in the way that we work. A lot
That's
of the
true.
mindsets of leaders, and so the policies and practices of organizations, are still stuck in the Industrial Revolution. This idea of command and control, that I'm the boss and you're the subordinate, and damn it, you're going to listen to me. And we're seeing that change. All the tools that are evolving around us are about removing friction and increasing collaboration. And so the organizations that are already taking the lead in that conversion, in that change, or let's call it not a conversion, but an evolution, they're the
Right.
ones who are having less issues with engagement and less issues with retention. But still there's work to be done. And so I think that while the mindset of the organization is something I'm focused on changing or participating in the conversation right now, it's also this perspective of the individual within the organization. This may take us down a bit of a rabbit hole, but there's an interesting sort of community that I have stumbled upon on social media. And it's called anti-work. So it's almost like a community of people that are opposed to work. And I'm trying to understand this. It's so antithetical to the way that I think, because I see the opportunity to work as humanity's greatest opportunity to make a change in the world. It's almost as if Earth is this giant ship out to sea, right? In the sea of the universe. Earth is this giant ship, and we're all on it. And if we're the crew of this ship, we have a responsibility to make sure the ship gets to its destination safely, and that as many of its passengers can enjoy the journey. And I think that this mindset that there's something exploitative about work, I think it just needs a slight shift. I think it needs a perspective shift. And so perhaps my work is not just going to be focused on the organizations, but focused on ideas that can help individuals reframe what it means to participate in the experience of work, what that can not only do for the world, but do for their lives individually. That to me is very compelling, because what I loved most about working at piano bars wasn't the tips. I mean, yeah, it's great. I love to get paid for doing a great job. Yes. It was the sparkle that I got to see in the audience's eyes when I played a song that they weren't expecting, when I played a song they were expecting, and we all had a great time doing it. Getting to see those people leave the building with a smile on their face, maybe in better shape than they were when I met them. Maybe they were having a rough day. Maybe they didn't feel like they had been seen or heard or appreciated, but damn it, I played their request and there was a connection. That to me is the change I want to continue to have in the world. And so I hope that through my work, and I appreciate the work you're doing, you're helping that change by just spreading messages, Joshua. So I hope that's what I'll be able to do in the future. And I'm really glad you gave me the opportunity to have this conversation with you here today, right now.
Fantastic. What a mission. I mean, Greg, what a mission. Of course, it's a compelling to want to shift that mindset individually in every person to enjoy work a bit more. And that is a mission that I bet all of us resonate with. Greg, I want to take this last bit of opportunity to give you the chance to let us know, where can we connect with you? Where can we find you? Where can we find your music? Do you still make music? I
Sure.
hope you do.
Sure. Well, if you enjoyed this and you want to learn more about the tip jar culture, I do
Mhm,
have a new book that's just come out. It's
mhm,
available on Amazon. It's called The Tip Jar Culture. And I'd love for
mhm,
you to go and grab a copy and then let me know what you think. Leave a review.
mhm.
For your listeners right now, I'll tell you right now, the ebook is on sale for 99 cents
Oh,
US.
whoa,
So,
whoa,
like,
whoa, whoa. We
go get a
need to do that.
copy. It's amazing.
Get,
Enjoy it. Tell me
get
what you
that.
think.
Oh, wow.
If you want to see
99
some of my
cents.
music, check me out on YouTube or Instagram.
Mhm.
And if you want to get connected, connect with me on one of those or just send me an email. If you go to my website, gregoryoffner.com, that goes right to me. So send me a note. Let me know what you thought of the show.
Fantastic, Greg. Thank you so much for your time. I will definitely check out. I invite everyone, first of all, check out that book. Go get that ebook. Check out what Greg is doing to change the workplace culture. And of course, I'm going to go check out your music, Greg. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. And I'll see you in the next one.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Joshua.
Bye bye.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.